You're listening to Always Building.
All right. Welcome, Diego, to the podcast, to the Cold Crowd podcast. I'm the Always Building podcast is the name of it now. Always building, always learning, right? Always advancing through this stuff. So, yeah, really excited to talk to you, man. You're the wolf of funnels, the wolf man, the wolf of funnels. So, we're going to be talking a little bit about funnels and sales funnels for those that aren't acquainted with the terminology and all that stuff. So, marketing and all kinds of fun, man. But I'd love to get started with you just kind of on, your story, where you got started, just the experiences you've sort of had like leading up to this. And a little later, we'll get into kind of what's next. But right now, I'd love to hear kind of just fill me in on sort of how you got going, how you discovered this whole world, and how you became the wolf of funnels.
Of course, man. First of all, thanks a lot for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you, man. So, I started in this digital marketing world around like 5, 6 years ago. I started with the classic how to make money online Google search. I stumbled with a lot of stuff, but I stick to ecom. I actually did drop shipping at the beginning. Um, One thing led to another. I actually tried to start an agency like back in the day, like 4 years ago maybe. That flopped. I want to start something like provide an actual service. And the only thing one of the things that I learned doing ecom and all that kind of stuff was building websites. So that was like my idea. Sell websites. I started actually cold DMing and cold emailing all kind of businesses. Well, mainly ecom businesses, fashion ecom businesses. I started pitching websites, but I was still involved in this, digital marketing world. I stumbled with these things called sales funnels. I started studying what those things are. I started actually using them, and as I was selling websites, I was like, dude, I'm selling something that I know that doesn't work. That they want to make money out of their websites, and I'm using like something that is actually going to help them. So I switched from selling websites to selling actual funnels. It was like I made the switch around a year ago, but for that time I've been using funnels for myself for around 4 years.
Okay.
I used to sell a lot of stuff, ebooks, ecom products, you call it. I've used funnels to sell that kind of stuff, even my own services. So yeah.
Amazing, man. Amazing. And so that's great, man. So that's quite a while. So you got a lot of experience in this. So that's great. And we can kind of dip into a couple of key points that you mentioned. I thought were interesting. So starting the agency, I think on this podcast, we're going to try to. I want to try to kind of bring out some failures too, because I think we all learn so much from failures. Like it's sort of taboo, to like bring up the failures, and you know what I mean, and kind of bring that up. And I know sometimes it's sort of painful, and those times are so hard for us and stuff like that. But it's like that's the testing ground, right? To like get to the next level and learn. It's like a learning experience every single time. I think when you're failing. So failing forward, so to speak. So I'm curious, like when you tried to start the agency, how did that look? What was your kind of concept behind the agency, and sort of what was the story there of how that happened? Because it sounds like you were kind of doing it for yourself. You were kind of doing some drop shipping. You were doing kind of the most accessible things you could do and learning the craft and everything. And then you were like, okay, agency, and then sort of what went down right there.
Okay, so I had that ecom background. Like I was just literally just on my computer. I wasn't used to to talk to people. To do the outreach, to do the actual sales calls, and I bought a ton of courses, and it was pretty much lead generation for a lot of industries. and I just wanted to keep helping fitness influencers. So that was my service, right? So I wanted to help them to get clients for their coaching and that kind of stuff. I started doing the outreach. I kept doing cold DMs, cold emails, but I got honestly very low response from people,
Mhm.
and the few responses I got, I just messed up the sales call. Then I tried to switch industries. I wanted to help exotic cars
Mhm.
agencies, like the ones that rent you the cars, um, all the kind of luxury stuff, limos, yachts, all the kind of stuff,
Mhm.
um, because I had a good idea for them, right? But it was just not a good offer. I just sucked at sales calls. It The agency, I think at least it was not for me at that time. It had a lot of moving parts,
Yeah.
and doing it all alone, it's super complex, man. Well,
So true.
yeah, you know this firsthand. So, yeah, definitely, if you're trying to start an agency, you need to build a team as soon as possible, man.
Oof, I know, man. I know. Well, I think that's, and that's a great point you made because I think, at least partners, right? Like having a partner on it, like
Yeah,
having somebody else, if you're not feeling confident on the sales calls, you go find someone that can do sales calls, right? Because
of
it's like,
course.
it's
Yeah,
that natural thing. And I know a lot of people, I hear a lot of people, in the group and elsewhere, they kind of talk to me and they're kind of like, hey, I want to start this agency and da da da. And you're kind of like, it's not really an agency if it's only just you, right? So in a way, so
that's
it's sort
right.
of it's an interesting thing. So that's interesting. So fitness coaches, and you were trying to kind of do the lead gen for them. You were going to do kind of like Facebook ads, bring that into a funnel. You kind of had your like little system built out. I would think
Yeah,
on the back end, right?
but the system was, running the ads, having the cell funnel, having the email sequence, all that kind of stuff, and it was just, I was very inexperienced
Yeah.
at that time. I knew a little bit of stuff, but not enough. Okay, it
Yep.
was just not for me. It was not a good fit for me. So yeah,
And it's that partnership. You could, I mean, with a good partner right there, you could have pushed through that. I think that would have been, you would have had some support on it. So it's like, yeah, it's such a good point to make that if you got the idea for an agency and you think you want to start one, man, go find, realize your weaknesses, I guess, right? Like realize what
definitely.
you don't know, and then that way you can sort of like fill in the gaps with somebody else, right? And like,
Yeah.
create something. It's a lot funner to do it that way too, in my opinion, man. Every time I had like a partner in there and you had like weekly meetings and you're chatting and you're kind of, it makes the whole process a lot funner. And I know we have a
Definitely.
lot of people in the group as well. It's sort of like in the group, it's like, a little simulating that a little bit, like giving people sort of some support, because it's like, shit, man, sometimes it's really lonely. I know firsthand. It's just you're just grinding all day every day. You're trying to get this, you're trying to attain whatever this is you're trying to get, and you're just like, you can
I
burn
know,
out.
man. Definitely. And another thing is that I want to start that agency because it was at that time the hottest stuff,
Right.
So I just left what I had because I wanted to hop in the trend of agency. So it was a big mistake because I was doing good with ecom with what I was doing, and I just hopped because it was the sexy business to start. So yeah,
Yep. Yep. I think, yeah, that's another thing too. Yeah, it's going after the shiny object, they call it, right? The
yeah.
shiny object syndrome. I know. And so, yeah, that's a tough one. That's always a tough one. Well, that's awesome. So you kind of, okay, so you kind of, sort of climbed back out of the hole from the agency thing, right? And after that, what was your mindset like at that point? Like, where were you kind of like, what was next in your mind? You go, okay, this was way too hard, too many responsibilities, too many moving parts. Didn't understand the offer yet. You weren't really, and then kind of how did you sort of solidify that, or how did you sort of take that to the next step after that? And what were you feeling at the time?
Well, I just wanted to something that was simpler, because the agency had a lot of parts of moving parts. So I just wanted to focus on one thing. And
Yes.
what I learned very well to do while doing ecom was building Shopify stores. So I was like, okay, I'm good at this. I can build them like pretty fast. and they look like pretty good. I can do this, and I just focused on that main offer, on offering websites for e-commerce stores. So yeah, that was like the shift from a lot of moving parts to focus on just one thing.
And so finding companies sort of kind of like filling in the doing that one thing and filling that gap, right? They are already spending money on ads. You're going to come in and you're going to like, basically prove yourself in that way. Like I'm going to fill in that gap, make the better website for you guys. Were you mostly doing new sites or was it like redesign?
New sites. I
New
was just
sites.
searching.
Okay.
I was searching e-commerce brands on Instagram.
Yep.
I just DM'd and emailed it accounts that didn't have a website like in the bio. So
Got you. That's a great strategy. How did the I'm curious for everybody listening. How did the DMs look? Like what was your kind of strategy to get in touch with them? Was it pretty standard or was it sort of asking questions or how did you kind of do that?
honestly, pretty basic and pretty bad. Actually, I shared an image of my first cold DMs on Twitter,
Yes.
and they are pretty bad, man. But um, the message was something like, "Hey, I stumbled across your Instagram. Your products look great. Your brand is amazing, but I noticed you don't have an e-commerce store. Okay."
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, people know that they need an e-commerce store. Okay,
Right.
they just cannot keep selling on Instagram, right? So they know it. So it's not like something new for them. So I was like, hey, you don't have an store, I can build it for you. Let's get on the phone.
Love it.
And that was pretty much my pitch. That worked because again they were aware that
Right.
they needed. So that was kind of a simple one. They were aware that they needed what I had to offer. And yeah, on the phone we went through some strategies, and like, hey, I can do this, I can do that, and close, man.
That's awesome, man. Well, I think this is a great example and a good point to bring up that, you knew the audience, right? You knew the stage that they're at based on sort of looking at their Instagram. You're able to go, okay, look, like they're feeling one of these ways at this point, right? Because they're just focused only on social media. Hey, you don't own this, right? There's all these thoughts going through their head where like, man, I really need to like get my shit together, right? I need to get my shit together soon. And you knew that. So you came in with this pitch that was kind of like already in their train of thought, right? Like they're already thinking this way, and then you're kind of jumping in like in the middle there and kind of continuing through, right? And helping them out.
Yeah, actually, a lot of people just replied me like, yeah, I was actually looking for someone to build my website. So it was it is a super simple offer, right? Because they already know it. They already want it, they need it, and I just come and offer what they want.
It's an amazing strategy, and I think it's a good example. I think there nowadays there's a big focus on intent data. This is becoming kind of like a buzzword nowadays, as far as like in the world that in the B2B world especially, but it's sort of like this. But also in B2C as well in e-com, this intent data thing is sort of, you got iOS 15, you got 14 and 15, you got, now there's all these like gaps in the data, right? And so many like different privacy settings. It's like, Facebook isn't able to pull in audiences as easy as it did before, blah, 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 blah. And I think it's a really interesting, it's an interesting way, like the way that you created this intent data, right? That it's basically intent data. You were going through, and just from seeing a couple, trigger points, you were like, okay, these guys probably need what I'm offering. Let me go ahead and reach out. You didn't go out there, build a list of every Instagram e-com store and blast out 1,000 billion gazillion emails.
No, man, I didn't know what was that. I didn't know like anything. I was doing everything manual.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to use these tools. I didn't even know that these tools existed. That would have made everything easier, man. Honestly, but
but would it? I guess that's a good question to bring to you. I mean, do you think it would have made it easier? I mean, you've got that's a pretty strict criteria you're looking for. It's like people with like good products, a brand, but they haven't built the store yet, right? They're just on social media trying to gauge the interest, test the market and stuff like that. Doing that manually, it actually, I mean, I'd be curious to see, because I think if you were to go kind of more scale on that, it would be harder to actually resonate the way that you made it resonate. I'm kind of curious what you think about that.
Yeah, well, as I was doing it like manually, like the whole message was like super personalized. Like
Yeah.
if the store sold, I don't know, whatever shoes, I like, hey, I saw that your shoes are like top notch, like the designs, like your branding is amazing, like it was like super personalized,
Yeah.
and that's something that I think that it cannot be doing like with AI. So yeah, and what I was doing, like at last I was sending videos, and
Mm.
that worked
Okay.
like amazing. So that's something that you cannot automate. So the video was just for them, and it just cannot be done like through these tools.
I think it's wonderful that we're talking about this because I think I think when a lot of people, especially with the tools as popular as they are now, right, and the courses that teach you to use the tools, and there's it's just so much focus on tools. I think a lot
Yeah,
of us, back to the shiny object syndrome, right? A lot of us get kind of caught up in the tools. It's easy to sort of
yeah,
lose yourself in the tools and the scale. And I talked about this with Cam. I had him on the podcast recently, and he was saying that it's sort of this problem with scale, this thing where everybody is encouraged to scale. And there's very little definition given to what does that mean, or what's the right time to really start scaling, or what's the right way to start scaling. I think automation is a great invention, a great technology for all of us to be utilizing, but there's things that don't scale that need to be done, right? Like at
yeah,
some level. And I think the more it's interesting, man. I think and we could talk about that a little bit, just on the balance of sort of like you were going out there manual. You could have easily, I mean, with what you were doing, it sounded like you were getting great results. You could have easily gotten right like a VA. Like, I'm curious, like what you're doing now, because it seems like these things that a human being needs to do, they're non-scalable, but they make a big impact. And I guess I'm curious your
yeah,
thoughts on that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's easy to think that I'm just going to automate everything, and you know what I mean. Like, I'll just have leads coming while I sleep, and this kind of promise, this dream that people have, right?
yeah. I think that's not realistic. Um, the first when I was first starting providing this funnel service on Facebook. So I was on Facebook group, posting stuff, talking with people,
Mm-hmm.
and what you cannot automate is that, and that is what has given me the best results, like building connections, building
Yep.
genuine relationships with people. You cannot automate a conversation. You cannot do that. You simply cannot do that. And till this day, I just stopped doing that on Facebook. I just do it on Twitter right now.
Mm-hmm.
I send videos on the DMs on Twitter. You cannot automate that,
Yep.
and that is what brings the most results, because they feel it's just me building a relationship with the one with the one person that I'm talking with. So you can always scale that, and that brings the most results, at least for me.
Great to know. Do you bring in a lot of referrals? Do you get people referring you a lot, and kind of like telling their other friends about you and stuff like that? Is that kind of something that sort of naturally happened out of that?
Yeah, definitely. Because let me tell you exactly what happens.
Please.
So I I have a conversation with someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they follow me, or I call them like, hey, I saw your profile on the timeline, or whatever. I just wanted to connect, blah blah. Um, we start talking what do we do, and as I send sometimes these videos, or just I'm just having a genuine conversation without the intent like to actually sell them, like in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
When they see someone looking for someone to build a funnel or something that we talked about, I get the referral, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or when someone needs a funnel, who's the first person that they think about? It's me. Why?
Yep.
Because we have an active relationship, right? They know what
Right.
I do. I'm their friend, so that's what is bringing me results. The better than automation and paid ads and all that kind of stuff works, but you cannot automate building relationships with people, and that's the most important thing. With those tools, we are just losing that, and it just becoming more effective, because as everybody's just automating that stuff, or are trying to automate that stuff, the ones who try to build genuine relationships with their audience are the ones who win on the long term. So that's very important for me.
Amazing point, man. I think, and this is so valuable for anyone listening, man. It's like, it's kind of that, what was it? Zag when everyone's zigging, or zig when everyone's zagging, right?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
kind of that swimming upstream thing that's just like, it's so impacting. Like everyone's doing one thing. And, again, I think the courses and the people, trying to, teach people how to automate these things, I get their point, and it makes 100% sense. And I think it works for a lot of people, but
Yeah, definitely.
it's really funny though. I have heard like of people, people get in touch with me sometimes and they go, "How do I send 10,000 emails a day?" And I'm like, well, there's a few ways to do it, but why do you want to send 10,000 emails a day? Oh, because, I'm trying to do cold email and I'm not really getting results that I want. And you go, well, sending more volume is not going to, it's not going to fix that. Because the other thing I wanted to mention about your situation there that you're mentioning is that you're extremely focused. Okay. And this is something that kind of drew me into your world from the get-go, actually, and kind of why I reached out to you in the first place. Because when, you're a great example of somebody who's building, a personal, kind of a hybrid. It's not quite a personal brand, but it's also not quite a brand, right? It's kind of like sort of this hybrid, like the Wolf of Funnels is a brand, but it's you. But you're extremely focused, and you're focused on one thing that you are a specialist at, and you have your methodology for it. And so when you connect with somebody and you're talking with them and conversing with them, it's like you're saying, they go, oh, I need a sales funnel. Boom, I'm going to Diego. It's just like a no-brainer. And it's that focus, you know what I mean? It's knowing what you're good at. And I guess let's dive into that a little bit. Like sort of, I understand you started with web design. I did as well. It's just like a common, I think, if you're kind of a slightly creative person, right? It's sort of like this natural thing of like, everyone needs a website in some sense,
definitely.
right? And I'm kind of curious, like how, I don't know how you ended up focusing, how, like, did you ever were you ever tempted to sort of generalize and, do all these different things like in the agency thing that you were planning? Did you, or did you kind of like naturally just kind of go, no, I'm going to be the funnels guy. I'm going to focus on this. And I know it's going to make a bigger impact. And I'm just kind of curious what your thought process was on that.
Yeah, well, that was something that I learned like way in the beginning, actually doing ecom, because my first stores were just like general stores, so I sold everything. Big mistake, right?
Yep.
So when I started to focus on one niche, actually my first big win with ecom was with a couple bracelets. So I was in that relationship niche.
Yeah.
I did a shout out, and that was the first time it worked. It actually worked. So it was when I niched to that. I really put a focus on what I was doing. So I just applied that like right now too. So yeah, that's why.
Amazing. That's great to know. And so one other question I had for you, man, specifically, and I think this is kind of maybe could be an interesting topic to go into, because I know, we have recently, like we had somebody in the group, for instance, that, he's in India. English is his second language, right? And he's getting into sales, and he's doing sales, and he was kind of mentioning to the group, hey, can I do sales, right? Like English is my second language. I have an accent. How do you guys think I can do high ticket sales? Do you guys think I can do, and somebody had told me that I should stay away from high ticket sales with an accent because something. And I wrote back immediately, like, come on, man. No, you can do anything you want. And, you speak great English. It's like, you're going to be able to communicate. I'm curious what your experience has been with that, being from Mexico, having English as your second language, having a bit of an accent, like, has that affect, do you feel that that's affected things? Do you feel like that's not an issue at all? What's kind of like your overall thoughts on that, and kind of your message to anybody, kind of selling into either European or American markets and coming in with a second language and this kind of thing? I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on that, man.
I don't think there's an issue. Of course, you need to have certain level, right? You need to be understandable. But for me, it has not been an issue. And like lately less, because the same thing, because I build relationships with people and they don't care that I'm Mexican, that I don't that English is not my first language. They don't care. they just don't care, because of
Yeah.
the same thing. They know me, they trust me, they like me. So that relationship building with people, with me, with my audience, is what helps me. It doesn't matter, honestly.
Awesome. Awesome. I love to hear that. And I think everybody listening, man, take a note on this, okay? Because I know that, especially in the beginning, I think there's a lot of worry about that. All of us can kind of have a little bit of that like imposter syndrome and kind of feel like, am I doing the right thing? Am I, this kind of thing. And so it's wonderful to hear that. And I think everybody, take a note of that. Diego, you heard it from Diego first, and something that we're always trying to do in the group, man, because my experience with it too. Like my wife is here from Mexico as well, and it's just like this kind of this kind of thing can kind of be like a little bit of a nervous thing, I think, for people, and it's just great to know that. Yeah,
Yeah,
to hear
but
that.
I'll be honest. At the beginning, when I was doing this agency stuff, I used to cold call businesses, dude.
Woo.
Dude, I was like, I don't know. I'm 24 right now.
Uh-huh.
That was like, I don't know. I was like 20, maybe 19. I don't know.
Yeah.
And my English was a little bit worse. So I just called businesses, and they were like, who the hell is calling me? Like, it's just a cold call from a Mexican kid that can barely speak English, dude. So that's hard. In that situation, in that
Yeah.
specific situation, was hard for me,
Yeah.
because because of the same. I was just a random stranger from another country, man. So just in that situation, I felt that it was like an obstacle for me. Uh, but after that, I'll say that again, but I feel it's important. After I started building relationships with people, that doesn't matter, man. That doesn't matter, and doesn't matter
Yeah.
your accent, doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter if you are black, white, you're rich, poor. It doesn't matter, dude.
Yeah.
Uh, that's really, really important.
Yeah, it's all in your mind, I guess, at the end of the day,
Yeah,
right? All this stuff is in your mind. I think it's so much about like mindset and just being like, I mean, just to have the bravery, just to have the balls to be like doing cold calls like you were doing, you know what I mean? It's just like, I know a lot of people that, wouldn't have that kind of confidence, you know what I mean? And so like just getting out there, it's kind of like, and I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like it's kind of like throwing yourself out there. It's
yeah,
almost like jumping in the cold water, you know what I mean? Like, you can try to dip your toe into it. Okay, like, is it cold? Oh man, it's really cold, and it makes it worse, right? You could just jump in, and you get used to it, right? It's kind of like
yeah, yeah.
trial by fire, right?
Yeah, of course, you get used to it. The first time I got an actual appointment, a
Mm-hmm.
cold calling, uh, the guy was like, "Yeah, tomorrow at 10 or whatever," and I started doing my little presentation, right, for making the sale. And dude, I was scared, man. I was just super nervous. I had like a presentation. I just went through like two slides, and then started talking. I started rambling, so awful, dude. But again, you get used to it. Now I talk with people all the time.
Yeah.
Actually, yesterday I was just talking with a guy interested in a funnel, and I was like, like super relaxed, like trying to help them. Like, what can we do? Like, it's just practice. It's just getting used to it. So yeah,
Well, and I think you touched on something briefly right there too, like that you're so much more relaxed when you're not selling, you're helping, right? Like
yeah,
that mindset shift, I think, also is extremely important. Like I think a lot of people, me included, man, when I first started getting going, selling and stuff, and that was definitely not my natural thing at all, right? I kind of like, I was much more like, building the websites, building the funnels, doing the market. I was like the guy in the background, and when I had to
yeah,
get in the front and actually sell, I remember the same thing, man. You end up like kind of rambling, and you're nervous, and a lot of it is because you're trying to sell, right? It's just this
yeah,
like in your mind, you're trying to sell them something or convince them of something, and as soon as you realize that, hey, this is just about results, relationship, and just helping. Like if I can help, I'll help. If I can't,
yeah,
it's
definitely.
okay, right? And maybe later on I can help. It's like yeah, it's a big mindset shift to just be helping, right? And just serving and
Yeah,
being like that.
definitely, man. Even
Yeah.
when I ask for the sale, uh, we just go through the whole strategy, and I'm like, would you like me to help you? And they're like, okay, yeah, man, how would it work? And that's it.
So
That's
easy.
like that,
So
like a
easy.
close. Yeah, so easy, man. Like,
Yeah.
would you like me to help you? They go like yes, and it's like, yeah, here's how it works. That's the price, everything, and that's pretty much it.
And do you have like kind of a these days, especially like, are you using kind of a framework or a script, or do you have anything when you jump on these sales calls, or do you kind of just freestyle it, man? I'm kind of curious about that too.
It depends because sometimes I just get on the phone with people that know that that need a funnel to sell anything, but
Right.
they just don't know like anything. So my first goal there is they understand like how a funnel can help them.
Hmm.
After they get that, I give some ideas like, hey, you can do this, you can add some upsells, you can add some bonuses. I guide them, like I paint a picture like what it would be to have like an actual funnel, no, right? So they know exactly how it will work. Sometimes I get on the phone with some experienced people, like
Hmm.
they know like everything. They just need maybe like some guidance, right? So
Yeah.
that's like my first goal, like identifying where they are, okay,
Hmm.
where they are,
Hmm.
helping them, guiding them the best way possible.
Hmm.
That's kind of the framework.
Awesome,
Know
man.
where they are and lay out, help them, like laying out the strategy, what it would it work for the product. Maybe they need to schedule appointments, they need
Hmm.
webinar registrations, they need to build their list, anything.
Yeah.
I go through that, and yeah, that's pretty much the framework.
Awesome, awesome, man. Yeah, that's great. And I mean, yeah, what stands out to me a lot about you, man, is that you know your audience. Like you know these different stages that they could be at. In the past, So, are you still doing the Instagram DMs and stuff, or is it mostly Twitter right now that you're just kind of like cultivating the Twitter following, and most of your clients are coming from there?
I only do Twitter right now. I used to
Okay.
do Facebook, but like 3 4 months ago maybe.
Hmm.
I just wanted to add one more channel, right? Because Facebook was
Right.
working pretty well. I was even posting content, like videos and stuff, and I just wanted to add another channel. I decided to go with Twitter, and I just like it a lot much more, and I
Yeah.
just stick to Twitter. So yeah, all everything comes from Twitter, from Twitter DMs. I have like a super small following,
Hmm.
but every person that follows me, I've actually talked with them. I've even gotten on the phone with a lot of them. So yeah, that's what I'm focusing on right now.
That's amazing, man. I mean, and that's really, I think that's really epic, actually, too, for everyone listening. The way that you're interacting. So, social media is just social media to most people,
Yeah,
right? It's just social media. It's just, yeah, here it is, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And I feel like you see it differently. Like when you see the social media, you're not just seeing this platform for whatever. You're seeing it as a way to interact with people, learn from people, jump on cool stuff like this, share your thoughts, like have do sales calls where you're already kind of pre-framing the offer, right? You already
yeah,
sent them a message. They already know who you are. It's no, it's really great. I mean, I think the way you're using social media is really like the best way to use social media, right? Is reach out to the people that follow you and actually engage with people and talk with people. Don't just feel like you're in an echo chamber, just kind of sitting there posting stuff and going,
yeah,
"What's happening?" Right?
yeah. I actually have like a concept
Uh-huh.
where you actually funnel people through your process, and that has not anything to do with sales pages and click funnels and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You funnel people down emotionally, and you funnel their attention. What does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
So first, they get to your profile, right? They see who you are, they see what you post, and some of them might resonate with what you have, with what you post, with who you are, and they
Mm-hmm.
might follow you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the first stage of the funnel, of this emotional funnel. Okay.
Right.
After that, you keep posting content. You get in the DMs with them.
Hmm.
You help them, whatever. Right. You keep building that relationship, and you keep funneling them through your relationship. Right. You keep
Hmm.
funneling them emotionally, and also their attention is going towards you.
Hmm.
That's like my emotional funnel that I have uh, and I, with pretty much everyone that I talk with, I just recommend this. I even have a huge thread on this topic, just breaking down how that works. But it's basically that, man. It's building that relationship and funneling people down through process, and just getting their attention with your content, and in this case, talking with them.
So smart, man. I love it. I love it. So it's a, it's that emotional, like, do you have a connection with the person, and
Yeah,
that's that first thing. Like, do you resonate with the person, and then they follow you, and then you have this content, right? And so you're creating content. I love your content, by the way, man. I mean, I have to tell, and everybody should go follow you. It's
thanks,
it's
man.
Wolf of Funnels, just kind of spelled just like that, at Wolf of Funnels on Twitter. Yeah, your content is awesome, dude. I just love how. I love how transparent it is. It's like what you're saying. You're kind of like funneling through your process and through like what you, kind of what you see as unique about what you're doing in a way too. Like, I always notice that there's something kind of unique in what you're bringing. Like, it's not just the straight Russell Brunson ClickFunnels ideologies, right? You're bringing these kind of little. I always see you using like psychological triggers in the headline that you can use, like a little, just adding one word right there, one little thing, it's just little things, I guess, that make a really big impact. And it's kind of funny. It seems to be a theme of this whole conversation, right? Is these little things you do that make a big impact, right? And so
Yes.
yeah, it's really interesting to see kind of your whole thing. And you have your email list as well, right? So
Yeah. Right.
you're kind of bringing that, and that sort of that last step of the emotional funnel. If they're not ready to jump on a sales call, they're not ready to have you do a funnel for them, right? They can sign up for the email list,
Yeah. Of
and they
course.
can be educated on the process, right? So you're basically just educating and building relationships, and just that's the way you're acquiring customers, essentially. And
Yeah.
I think it's so modern, man. I mean, I think, and I speak about this all the time. I write about this right now because I think it's really intriguing, is that, I think the buyer journey, right, is changing so radically. Like, after last year, I feel like it's just completely we're like in a different ecosystem of marketing and sales and everything, right? It's all changed.
Yeah.
And people kind of need to be able to guide themselves through the funnel. Like, they want educational content. They may be top of the funnel where they're kind of like unaware of what's out there. They're unaware that there's a solution. They're, unaware of what their problem really is. They know they're having this pain, but they don't really like understand what the problem is, and so you're educating them at every step of the way, like, you know what I mean? And then they're able to explore that. And yeah, I think it's really interesting, man. I think what you're doing is doing that in social media in your trademark kind of way, right? It's just very relationship focused. It's it's
Yeah.
it's not scalable, but it doesn't need to be, because every touch point that you have, it makes an impact. It's not just a dead, you know what I mean? It's not just a dead cold email getting into the spam folder or something and never gets seen. It's not a paid ad that just kind of people swipe right. It's something that really like hits them, like, whoa, wow, this guy's reaching out. Man, he seems really friendly. Look at what he's doing. Oh, wow, he's educating. I'm interested in this. Wow, he builds some killer funnels. Anyway, I think it's so inspirational, man. I mean, I think it's extremely inspirational for everybody listening, that, like, there's relationship building is still the top thing, no matter what you do,
Yeah.
basically. And how
Definitely.
do you see that funneling into like e-com and thing? Let's kind of change the context of that, because I'm interested in that, because for B2B, for agency, for freelancer, however you want to look at it, there's one way of doing that, right? And like, you're selling fairly high ticket services, I would imagine, as well. So you're charging a fair amount for what you're doing, and so it's one thing. How do you conceptualize that when it gets to e-commerce and you're selling like cheaper things in a more consumer driven, volume driven approach? Like, how do you see that kind of relationship building still kind of being at play there?
So, how do you build a relationship as an ecom brand? That's a
Yeah,
good.
that's exactly. I mean, like, if you're doing funnels for an ecom brand, or you're doing funnels for a, you know, I don't know, someone selling kind of these lower ticket things, like nutraceuticals or CBD or whatever example you want, right? But
Yeah.
how do you see, like, what you're doing in the DMs with Twitter? How do you see that kind of happening in the sales funnel, like as you're walking through, because it's building a relationship too, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I'm kind of curious, like, how you see that. What's that flow look like? It's obviously a little different than following and then DMing. You know what I mean? How do those mechanics work in your mind?
Whew.
It's a big one. It's a big one.
Yeah. 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 Hmm. I'd say it's tough question, man. Okay, so as an ecom brand, you need to be, um, you need to stand for something, right? You cannot just sell whatever protein or whatever. You need to stand for something, and that's how you build an actual relationship with your audience. Okay, they need to believe in the same things that you believe in. Whatever, in getting in shape, maybe the brand is all about um, being like the best version of yourself
Mm-hmm.
through fitness, or maybe a makeup brand. They are all about being like a supermodel. So they need to stand for something. That's
Mm-hmm.
how you can build a relationship as an ecom brand. But I would not overlook the DMs, man. Just a little DM or maybe a little reaction or whatever uh, can make a huge difference because nobody's doing it. As you said, when everybody is sick, you sack. So I am sure not even 1% of ecom brands engage with their followers, at least on Instagram, because it's more popular there.
Mm.
Not even 1% do it, and uh, just a little DM. You can hire a DM, you can hire a VA. Sorry,
Yeah.
you can hire a VA just to do that, to send whatever a coupon code, or just like, hey, thank you for the follow. That's that it can be a game changer for ecom brands when it comes to building relationships with their audience, because they are not an actual person, they are a brand.
Right.
But just that can make a huge impact in their brand and in the lifetime value of a customer.
Damn. Damn. I love it. I love it. So yeah, just that personal touch at every step of the situation, no matter what, whether you're B2C, whether you're B2B, just touching those followers a little bit. Hey, you're there. We know you're there. Thank you
Yeah,
for
man.
following us.
Yeah, man. It's just caring, man. It's just caring
Damn.
about that person that clicked that follow button, that subscribe to that email list, that bought that product. It's just caring, man. Caring about people, and that's it, man. That's a game, or at least that's my game.
Yeah.
Uh, that's what I do all the time. I just try to care about people. I genuinely try to help people. Uh, in the DM. Sometimes I even get them on Telegram just to send maybe a file that will help them, or even I get on calls with people just to help them to guide them in the best possible way. So that's the game I play, man.
I love it. And so, this is something that, one of my favorite marketers, out there is, his name's Jay Abraham. I don't know. Do you know about this guy?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's awesome, right? And his whole thing, his whole focus of everything is to become the trusted advisor, to become, like, everything is about becoming the trusted advisor. It's not about selling, it's not about profiting, right? It's not about any of that. It's about becoming the trusted advisor for these people, because at the end of the day, that's how the flywheel begins, right? Like, and that's why I asked you about referrals earlier, because I'm curious, I'm sure you get a ton of referral with that kind of attitude, that kind of mindset, and going out and sort of touching people that way. The referrals just fly in, right? Like, word of mouth starts to kick in, even though you have a small following, and it's kind of cool. I think you probably agree with me that, I think Twitter's one of those places you don't need to have a huge following really these days to
yeah, of course.
make an impact, right? Like, there's guys that have big followings and they're doing their thing, but kind of interesting, actually, that I saw someone tweet this recently, actually, where they were kind of like, man, the guys with the small followers are really, like, teaching the really interesting shit right now. Actually, the bigger guys, and I think everyone would feel this naturally. Like when you get so many followers, you start to kind of, oh shit, should I say that? Should I share that? Should I do that? Should I, right? You start to kind of like, damn, I don't know. I don't know what I should be. You know what I mean? There's another like level to it. And when you have that many followers, you're able to be so focused, like so liberal. You're just like, yeah, here's my process for building funnels. Take it, steal it, think about it, ponder it, look at it, bookmark it. Eventually you probably become a customer. Like at some point you're probably going to come back like around, like maybe whether it's 1 month, 6 months, 2 years, right? And so you're building this compounding interest by just trying to be the trusted advisor, and you're there top of mind with them. So it's such a big impact, man. It's such a big impact. I think everybody underestimates this. I think we're in a world of automation, paid ads, scaling, and people forget about the human touch about it. Yeah, it's something that I'm kind of bringing into the cold outreach stuff too recently. I don't know, everybody who's listening, you guys should check this guy out. His brand's called Charm Offensive. Have you ever seen this, Diego?
No, never.
This Charm Offensive guy, man. So you'll love it with the attitude you got, man. You're gonna absolutely love it. But he basically teaches people he gives scripts and kind of frameworks on how to send cold emails that are funny, that are like clever, that are silly, funny, kind of quirky. He's British, so it's kind of got the British kind of slant to it, kind of humor a little bit, but it's a really unique angle, and he's actually one of my inspirations, I think, in the world right now, because what he's doing is he's created his own niche. Like there is no other person doing this, right? He's like created this thing where it's like funny cold email scripts, funny follow-up scripts, funny sales call scripts, funny Upwork kind of things and stuff like this. And yeah, it's actually really epic stuff, man. But it kind of takes me back into that sort of relationship building, that everybody's a human being, if you know what I'm saying. Like everybody's a human being, and whether they're CEO or whatever, they have a sense of humor, and you can tap into that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And what I noticed mostly again in ecom is that we forget that those clicks, those visits, those opt-ins are actually people, right? So
oh, sorry. my computer closed.
Okay. Okay, all good?
Yep, all good.
Awesome. Yeah, what I was saying is that we often forget, I saw this in ecom, we forget that those clicks, those opt-ins, those views are actually people. It's easy to forget that because we just see the data, okay? You see the open rates and you see all that kind of stuff, and it's easy just to forget that they are people. So it's important not to forget it and to care about them.
That's right, man. That's right. I love it, man. This is such good knowledge for anyone listening to it, especially, whether you're starting out or whether you're like in the middle of this thing. I think it's really good information, because it's like, it's so easy, man. We have like Google Analytics, and you have this and you have that, and you have all these technologies and all these automations. It's so true, man. And I love that that's becoming the topic of this podcast here with you, is kind of bringing back that human element, even though you're building sales funnels. And it's funny because now that you're saying that, I do like your threads and your posts about funnels. You do tend to put a very like human psychology kind of, these people are humans that are reading it, and this is how to kind of impact them. You know what I mean? I noticed that about you very specifically.
Yeah, I do that because it doesn't matter how good your funnel looks, how great the copy is. It might be super persuasive, but if people don't trust you, they won't buy. It doesn't matter who writes your copy, who built your funnel, your offer. It doesn't matter. If they don't trust you, they won't buy. It won't convert. It's like the one component that everybody like overlooks. They just try to optimize everything except the relationship they build.
So true. It's so true, man. We see it. I think, those of us doing this for a while, it's like you see this all the time, and it's funny too. I've worked in a couple of like organizations, like B2B organizations, and you know, a lot of times like they'll come back to me with like all this kind of like analysis on the data. You know, it's all about the data. It's all about the ROI. Like, you know, hey, how can we boost ROI on this? How are we going to do this? You know, okay, you know, why are people not converting? You know, da da da. You know, and you're kind of like, man, like it's missing something. It's missing this human element. You guys are too focused on conversions and you know, tracking the data, right?
Yeah,
There's got to be a mixture of that, I guess, in a way. You know what I mean?
yeah, and that's important, man. That's important because at the end of the day, you need to optimize whatever your process, your funnel, whatever. But you can have the ugliest funnel. You can have the the least efficient processes. But if people like you, if people trust you, they will buy it, dude. I've seen awful funnels, dude. Like awful funnels, like just an ugly headline, like "Hey, watch this video," and the BSL is like someone with their phone, and just awful. And they have a button just to schedule an appointment, and that works.
Yep.
It's crazy because yeah, the headline can be better, the lighting of the video can be better, like you can add a little bit of copy and add a little bit of branding and all that stupid stuff, and it would maybe convert better. But dude, just trust is the metric that everybody overlooks, man.
Man, that is so deep, dude. I love that. I love that that coming back to that. You know what I mean? Um, it's amazing too because you know you got 4 years of experience. You're doing, you know, funnels, you're doing ebooks, you're doing e-com, you're doing your own services, which is like B2B. I mean, you're flipping from so many different contexts of this thing, and the consistent thing always is the trust, is the
Yeah,
actual relationship.
yeah, it's what matters, man. Actually, my when I sold my first website, it was to this woman. She was into fitness, uh, and I just again I called the end her like,
Hmm.
hey, you don't have a website, you can have, you know, your offers there, your blog, whatever. It took me like, I don't know, like 3 weeks to close her. But funny thing is that we got on the DMs like, hey, I have this problem, and I was just trying to help her. We got on the phone like a couple times before even asking for the sale,
Hmm.
just trying to help her. And in the third, fourth call, whatever, um, she was like, okay, I'm ready to for you to build my website. And I was like, oh my god, this is happening, man.
It
I was like,
works. It
okay,
works.
let's do it, man. I didn't even ask for the sale. It just it was just like that,
It
as
just
I'm just
happened.
telling you. Yeah, it just happened. Why? Because I was helping her. I didn't know at that time, but I was just building that relationship with her. She was starting to trust me. It doesn't matter that she was actually in the U.S.
Hmm.
and I was here in Mexico. It doesn't matter the distance. It doesn't matter that I'm Mexican. The language doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, man. Uh, that was like my first big win with that website venture, and it was just that I was an awful salesperson. Uh, everything I sucked at everything, but I still made the sale, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, like you're actually helping. So this is, I
Yes.
think, you know, and this goes back into it. I think it's just, you know, the buyer journey. You know what you know, in B2B they like to call the customer journey or the buyer's journey,
Yeah.
right? Where, you know, from awareness to you know to consideration, right? To you know, making a decision, and you know, these kinds of these steps of the funnel and everything like that. And you see all these like visualizations of it, and it looks
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
this and da da da. And I remember I used to, you know, I used to read the HubSpot blog, man. I remember like 10, you know, maybe 8 years ago, I was like reading the HubSpot blog. HubSpot was hot. They were like kind of, you know, another example of actually a company that really cares about the people. It's interesting. You know, I think they did onboarding concierge one-to-one onboarding. They did that like up until I think it was like 2 years ago or something, man. Since they started, they onboard every customer one by one, right? And like assess their issues and blah blah blah, and get feedback and you know these kinds of things. But anyway, not to divulge into that too much, but it's, you know, there are some companies out there doing it. I think, you know, it's
Yeah.
just not a lot of people know that they're doing it or know that they did it. But this buyer journey, you know, it's so much more in control of the customer now. It used to be that you could put an email opt-in on a ebook and get someone to sign up, and then you're like dripping them messages and you're trying to like kind of push them towards the sale, and then eventually they buy and all these kinds of things. And more so now, I think it's becoming more about just giving that information out for free and building that, like you said, building that trust, not putting the paywall or the the email opt-in wall in front of them at all. Just going like, hey, explore the content, check it out, read the blogs, check my videos. Like, I'm creating all that, right? And it's sort of I know a lot of people are kind of confused about how to make content also, and I'd love to ask you about that really quick, because I think that's also something that I meet with a lot of people who are just like cold outreach crazy, right? They're just trying to automate cold outreach. They want to scale it up, and that's all they want to do, but they're not really creating content. They're not really, doing that thought leadership thing. And I'm kind of curious, like, and it's hard to know where to start. You're kind of like, shit. I mean, like, what am I going to write content about? What's going to, because it's all about making an impact and valuable content and these kind of words you hear, but what does that really mean, right? And I think, I'd love to get your insights on that, because you're creating some content, in my opinion, that is extremely valuable. It doesn't give away the whole thing, but it gives away enough to where you're really feeling like, but it gives away a lot, honestly. Like, it may give away more than some other people give away. So I'm kind of curious, like, how you approach creating content, how you start with that, how you're like, okay, I need to create some content. What's your mindset go? What do you do there?
That's an interesting question, because when I first started creating content was when I was doing outreach on Facebook. And this is, when you're starting, I'd say you need two strategies. One, short-term strategy, and that would be the cold outreach, and a long-term strategy. What do I mean? Well, again, the short-term strategy is the cold outreach, like straight to the pitch, right? Booking calls and all that kind of stuff. But what will happen in the long term? This content creation is your long-term game, okay? Those little pieces of content, those videos, those tweets, those blogs, those podcasts will so those pieces of content will stay online like forever, right? A YouTube video, a podcast, a blog, whatever, right? And people will consume that content. Okay, they will educate themselves about whatever your niche is, and that content is like a little army of you teaching people what you do. Okay, it's a little army of people building that trust for you. Okay, those emails, those blogs, whatever. Actually, I was maybe like a week or two ago in your blog, man. And you post a lot of good stuff. And when I was reading those blogs, you were not doing anything. Probably you were sleeping, man. And those blogs were doing the job for you, like teaching me stuff, like building trust with me. Your blog was doing that for you, so you could do another stuff. So that's kind of my approach to content. Okay, it's your long-term strategy for getting clients, man.
And so if somebody was listening right now that was like, okay, Diego, I really want to create some content. I'm fucking you sold me, man. Right, I'm on it. But what should I write content about? Like, what's that first? Like, where do I get the inspiration to make content like you do about my niche or about my thing? Like, what kind of advice would you give to them on that level? Like, of just getting started and going like, I don't really know what content to make. Where would you tell them to kind of get inspiration, or what would you tell them on that?
Well, I would tell them, like, first, just start, because there are no rules. Just start. But definitely there is good content and bad content, right?
Yep.
So just go to your favorite accounts and just see what they are doing, model what is proven to work, and that's it, man. Maybe if you are just getting started, you don't know anything about the topic, just share what you learned. So let's say you see a YouTube video about whatever sales, you can just record a video or tweet or write a blog like, hey, hi friends, I just saw this amazing video and I learned this. And that's your piece of content, man. You will
Amazing, man.
you will get better with time. I remember that my first videos, dude, they suck. They suck big time. They are on YouTube, man. But I stopped recording videos because I just do Twitter right now. Uh, but I compared the first video with the last one, and dude, I are super different, man. In the
Yeah.
first one, I was like, I couldn't speak. I was getting nervous, and in the video number 200, I was like just supernatural, grabbing my phone, like, hey, and just talking about certain topic or whatever, and you can just get used to it. Also with my email list, I started it. I don't remember, maybe over a year ago.
Hmm.
The first emails were awful. Like they were just not good. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
but with time, I've improved. I improved my emails. Like I don't do like fancy emails. It's just plain text. But I mean the content, the way I write, it's better. Okay, I can notice that I write better compared with the first emails in this case. The same with any type of content, dude. Just start, share what you learn through your journey, and that's pretty much it. That's how you start with content creation, man. Just share
I
your
love it.
journey.
I love it. I love the value that we're putting on the journey, number one, and the learning, because I think also too, it's funny that you say that, because I think one thing, I'll make 2 points on this. I think the first one is that you learn faster when you create content around what you're learning. Like,
Yeah,
it accelerates your learning. It accelerates your skills. It accelerates everything that you're doing, I think. You know what I mean? To
yeah,
kind of create content. Writing, being able to write about your expertise, I believe, is that kind of like cornerstone where, like, okay, you really know what you're talking about if you can write about it, and you can write 3,000 words about it, and you can write a whole email about it, and you can kind of like get emotions involved and stuff like that, right? And it's that, yeah, it's so important. It's so important just to kind of like learn through learning, like learn even more through the learning, and not feel like you have to be the absolute expert, because there's
of
all
course.
these different levels of the shit, right? Like there's people at different levels, and there's people at those different levels too, like below those levels, and they want to learn from somebody, and they don't necessarily need to learn from the person teaching some kind of enterprise high level super deep. There's principles you can learn there, but there's somebody closer to you, right, that you could actually work with, that actually would help you, like you're doing right now. And at some point, I'm sure you're going to be working with higher level clients, higher level people, you're not going to have the time to be maybe working with the same kind of people you're working with now, right? You're going to be advancing as well, and so
Yeah,
and someone's going to take your place in there, and kind of be at that stage. So it's like this constant thing that's happening. The other thing I wanted to say was, jumping on sales calls is one of those crazy weird things that it's so counterintuitive to think about, but it's like, I know for me personally, man, I was so scared of sales calls. It's like what you were saying. I was nervous. I talked too much. I had no idea what I was doing. And as I started to do more of them, you start to like see yourself from the third person. You're not like
hmm
so in your own head going like, oh, what am I doing? You're kind of like more like seeing yourself from above, kind of going like, okay, just listen, try to understand, take notes, take a lot of notes, try to be able to like repeat back what they said to you, you know what I mean? And like reassure and like do all these kinds of mechanics. And one thing I started to notice was that there were all these questions that came up, like on the sales calls, like every single time. There's always these questions, like,
yeah,
how do you do this part? Why do you do it that way? There's like these questions that come up. And when I started taking notes of those things, it gave me so many jumping off points to create content, because I'm like, oh, like I'll just answer their questions. Like I get these questions from real people I'm trying to sell to. I'll just go ahead and like answer these questions in a blog post and say, yeah, this is why I do what I do, like this, because that, because this, right? And that can give you such a good. But I agree with you 100%. It's just start, man. Just start writing content. And I think this is something that, it's like you said, having a long-term strategy. A lot of times people hear that and they kind of go, oh yeah, well, I'll just do cold outreach for now, then I'll do content later. But it's like, man, no, start it all right now. Start the content, start the outreach, get on the sales calls. That'll make your content better. And then you start to, the whole thing starts to kind of get better. And you, like you said, you just get better and better and better and better and better. And soon enough, man, you're on, you're writing for bigger publications, you get
Yeah.
something in the right, like you start getting press and things. You can start, so much leverage gets created with that content. Yeah, so yeah, really happy that we went through that, man, and that you kind of explained that from that, because I agree, man. My first emails and my first blog posts were shit. I mean, absolute shit. Like, believe me, they were shit. I was writing like, I thought I could scale it too, right? I just need like 100 blog posts and then like I'll rank in Google or something, And it's like, no, man, and just not the way, man. You got to write, you got to put love and care, like you said, for the human being that's reading it into each piece of content. You know what I mean? So it's not a numbers game. It's more of like creating a great asset, right? Like something that can live forever.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And so I love it. One thing I also want to go back on real quick on your whole vibe and your whole thing that you're doing. Something that I'm pretty terrible at. I'll be honest with everybody. Focus, man. You are a focused gentleman, my friend. I am very impressed with how, because you said you were making videos on YouTube, and then when you flipped to Twitter, you were kind of like, I'm going to take a break from the videos. I'm just going to go 100% into Twitter. I'm going to build relationships and do this kind of emotional funnel, like you had mentioned, like you had termed it earlier. And I think that's just amazing how you're able to focus so deeply on one thing, man. You're the wolf of funnels. You're only on Twitter, creating a lot of content right now. You're going one by one, everyone that follows you, and you're creating a relationship. Yeah, if you want to speak on that a little bit and just how you arrived at that, man, because I think it's just it's really remarkable. Most of us, including myself, are bouncing around always. Like right now, probably, like as I sit here right now, I probably have like 7 projects like in front of my face. It's just insane. And sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? And then I see a guy like you and I'm like, shit, man. And here's this guy doing this. So yeah, I'm curious if you talk about that a little bit and maybe just speak to whoever's out there jumping from niche to niche to niche, just not sure what they're doing. What kind of advice would you give them, and where's that focus come from, dude? How did you do that?
Well, yeah, I see a lot of people just jumping from project to project. That focus, I think that came from the first lessons I learned. With ecom, I tried to have a general store. Dude, that doesn't work. At least for me, that doesn't work. Yep. I'm not Amazon. Just focus on one thing, and it just happened that when I focused on one thing, it worked. So I just keep applying that principle right now. I was just focusing on Facebook. That was like my main focus. I was uploading actually all the content on Facebook, but I was just repurposing the videos, just uploading that stuff to YouTube, to LinkedIn, to I even had a little a podcast, but that podcast where it was just the audio of the videos, but my main focus was on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And it all comes from that first lesson, to focus on one thing. When I switched it from Facebook to Twitter, I was losing that focus on on my outreach, and I just happened to like more Twitter, and I was like, okay, let's focus here. And I stopped doing everything on Facebook. I have a bunch of Facebook friends that I used to have as leads, because I was adding friends, having conversations, uploading content. I have a whole bunch of people there, but I haven't posted, I don't know, for 8 months, 6 months. So it's just, I don't know, maybe it's a mindset, maybe. And well, there is actually a book that talks about that. It's called Focus, Daniel Goleman. Okay. So
awesome.
It's just, the main idea of that is that you cannot focus or real focus on two stuff, on two things at one time. And I just try to apply that here. So I'm not a guy of multiple projects. I just want to laser focus on one thing, and one thing only, man.
Love it, man. I love it. Well, I think it's really inspirational to everybody just to hear this, because I think you're pretty, you have a long way to go. I mean, I can only imagine the arc that, that you're about to to make something like a hockey stick. If you're listening to the audio here, I think that's where you're headed, because the approach you're taking is really, it's something that I tell a lot of people. It's these non-scalable things that make a lot of impact, and content is one of those non-scalable things that it just makes such an enormous impact that it just can't be underestimated. It just can't. I think a lot of people are nervous about it because they see it as a long-term thing. But man, I think we're all surprised at how fast sometimes that stuff can go. Like when you make a really good piece of content. And then, what I love these days, one of my ethos is on marketing in general is, again, giving that information away for free and not asking for an email in return, not for asking for anything in return, just wanting them to come in and see me as a trusted advisor. That's all I want. And paid ads is one of those things a lot of people kind of only focus on conversions. And what I love right now is creating like a really great piece of content and then running paid ads to it, like getting it out to a wider audience that I know is that targeted audience, but getting that content like out, you know what I mean? Rather than letting it sit there and not do much. I actually try to amplify the content and the message and the ethos that I have more so than like, I don't know, amplifying just, something straight to a conversion, straight to a form, straight to it, right? Like not worrying about the conversion. The conversion will come later as they see me as the trusted advisor, right? And so it's not very data driven. It's not very, some data analytics person probably would hate me for saying it, but I think, for me, I mean, and for, the companies I'm involved in right now, it's working great, man, because, people undervalue brand awareness and trust, like you said, I think a lot. And that's kind of one big takeaway I took from this conversation, man. It's just, what you're doing. Yeah.
So, and in the long term, sorry to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
In the long term, that's more profitable. That brings, if we're talking about analytics, that brings a higher ROI and all that kind of stuff in the long term. Okay, maybe you run an ad to a blog post, maybe you get $0 in return, but in 1 month, 6 months, a year, whatever, that ROI is exponentially bigger than just pitching your offer. Actually, when I don't know if this statistic is right, but when there are only 3% of the audience is actually an active buyer. So when you are just smashing offers on Facebook ads or whatever, you are just targeting the 3% of your audience. Okay, but with that blog post, you are targeting 50% of the audience, 80% of the audience.
Yeah,
and that eventually will become an active buyer. Okay, so that's why it's more profitable in the long term, and that long term sometimes it's not that long. Maybe it's a week, a month, 3 months. That's in reality that's not a lot of time. So a lot of people just focus on the front end money instead of building a brand equity and actually building that trust with people over time.
I love it. It's compounding interest at that point. It's compounding returns, which are not just ROI, but it's like a long-term thing, right? And it's I think it's also where you get the most testimonials. I'm sure you can probably attest to that, right? You get better testimonials if you've built that trust and educated beforehand. And, if you screw one little thing up in the project, they're like, it's okay. You know what I mean? It's fine. Like it's natural, whereas if you were just pitching them and they were like, okay, fine. And then, they're like watching you so hard, right? It's like you're creating a different dynamic with the audience as well.
Yeah. Even it's an easier close because as they consume your content, they know what you do. They know what you can do, how you help them, like your process. They know everything. Like sometimes it's just you get on the phone and you close. It's not.
That's right.
You don't need to have like those little salesy presentations.
No, or even the discovery, really, right? You gotta get on the phone. And you go, okay, let's hear about what you're doing, right? Well, I ingested your blog post. I watched your webinar. I checked out through, and you're like, oh, well, cool. So, do you have any questions? No, I want to buy. How much is it? Right? It's like, whoa. I've had a few of those where it's just like that is the bet. That just feels so good, and you're like, wow. If I hadn't, like you said, if I hadn't just started
Yeah.
it wouldn't have happened, right? It wouldn't have happened that fast. And I think that's the webinar funnel. Everybody loves a webinar funnel. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I love a webinar funnel. Like a webinar funnel is to me the peak. It needs to be followed up properly. Obviously, the old school thing where you get a bunch of people on the webinar and then some sales rep calls you, it's kind of terrible. But the webinar funnel itself, man, I think is one of those things that is so overlooked by the current crop of people trying to make, agencies and all this kind of stuff. They're not looking at the whether it's a VSL or a webinar, but just like that kind of extended presentation where you're going through the problem and then you're going through the solution and you're walking through the process and what you do uniquely, right? And then at the end, you're kind of going, hey, you can work with me if you'd like to. Like, you've seen kind of how I do my thing. If you want to work with me, let me know. Otherwise, you know what I mean? Like, I hope this gave you a bunch of value. It's like, it's giving that value up front. And this is something that I'm experimenting with in cold outreach as well, because it's commonly done with paid ads. But, for bigger B2B deals, I'm very curious, going forward, how a webinar funnel in a cold email can work. Because how easy is it? How hard is it to get 15 minutes of someone's time these days, right? It's almost impossible. But getting them on a webinar where you're teaching something that may interest them or is in their sector, or, is something that's kind of hot or trending in the industry, or, right? Like we mentioned intent data earlier and what you were doing with Instagram, right? Like just something that's like, get people with intent. Even what we're talking about right now, just teaching them kind of the fundamentals of something and going, hey, I can help you with this. Man, like the reply rates from those cold emails, the click-through rates on those cold emails, I think it's kind of almost that hybrid of automation and personal touch, I guess, that we were kind of talking about earlier. It's like the closest you're going to get, because you're giving value up front and you're really not even making an ask. It's like 80% value, 20%, selling, I guess, or something like it's that Pareto principle, right?
Yeah.
And so, I'm curious. Do you have any experience with webinars? Have you ever done a webinar or done anything like that?
No, never actually.
I think that's something you and me got to talk about later. I'm thinking that, we should talk about a webinar, because, the Cold Crowd group is definitely like growing. And, I want to do some webinars as well, where we could do some training and, talk about some stuff. Maybe do a webinar about funnels, but I find that kind of like training situation to be the future of the thing, to be honest, because I think it's more impactful than a blog post. Not everybody wants to read a whole blog post. So you're doing something a little interactive. It's a little bit more visual. You're really getting to hear your voice and meet the person, right? But you're doing it one-to-many instead of one-to-one. So really interesting shit, though, man. I think, regardless, though, it's all about what you said, man. Maintaining that personal care and focus on educating and helping the client or the customer. So I think it's just awesome, man. We can kind of start to wrap up here. I know I've kept you for a while here, man. This has been really, really fun. I really think that, you're a brilliant dude, man. I'm really, I look up to you in a sense, like with that focus, man. I'm really like, I'm kind of watching you now. I'm like, I got to think about this focus a little bit more, man. I'm a little bit, I get spread too thin sometimes just because I'm such a crazy, passionate guy. But I think that focus, man, it's underrated, and most people don't harness it, enough.
Definitely, man. It's a big issue, but you know what? One last point. I talked with a guy on Twitter, and he's just like you, man. Like, hey, I want to do cold outreach. I want to do marketing. I want to start building websites and all that kind of stuff. But he just not take action. So and you are kind of the opposite. Like you are involved in a lot of projects, but you actually do shit. So that's amazing, and I really admire that, because you are like, okay, let's do it, and right now. So that's amazing, and that's something, a good trait of you, man.
Well, thank you, man. I mean, I think my ethos on it. I mean, maybe it's a coping mechanism, but I think my ethos is kind of on it, like just a lot of smaller bets, and not taking one big bet, but taking a lot of smaller bets, and kind of just enjoying the process of the stuff. I think there's times where I really focus in. Like right now, I'm actually kind of entering a phase of my life where I really feel like I really want to focus more on one thing, and kind of like you're saying, educate people, help people, be a little bit more in that mode. And I think that is kind of like I'm finding to be my purpose. I think more so than anything is to just kind of like having so many experiences. The only value that really comes from that, I guess, is being able to teach people about, hey, I've like tried this, tried that, tried this, failed at that, succeeded at that, failed at that, succeeded at that. And so bringing that to people. But yeah, man, I think, it's all about taking action at the end of the day, no matter what, man. And I think, as many experiences as you can have, I guess is
Yeah.
just better for you, right? At the end of the day. But the focus, man, I think, especially early in the game, like, 4 years in, 1 year in, less than a year in. Some of these guys that we're talking to right now are 6 months in, or they haven't quit their job yet, or they're thinking about dropping out of college, or or they're like 5 years in or something, you know what I mean, or 10 years in and they're advanced. But either way, it's like that focus is so it's like the holy grail, like if you can truly focus all your energy into one place, I mean, I
Yeah,
think
it's
you're a
way
good
better.
testament to it. Yeah, you're seeing the results of it, man.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I don't think you're going to have a low Twitter follow count for very much longer either. So
Thank you.
we're not going to worry about that now. But awesome, man. Well, I think yeah, we can start to wrap up unless there's anything else you want to kind of add to this. I'd be happy to hear it. So
That would be all from my part, man.
okay, perfect. Well, let's plug your shit, man, real quick again, so that everyone knows where to find you. So, yeah, drop your website, man. Drop anything you want to promote right now. I mean, I think you are definitely a guy to watch. So I'm give people where to watch you and where to check all this stuff out.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. So yeah, just my Twitter. I am just active there. Wolf of Funnels at Wolf of Funnels. And my website is wolfoffunnels.com. That's
Man,
that actually you can get. I don't sell anything there. In the first page, it's just an actual guide on how to build high converting funnels. How I learned actually to build high converting funnels by modeling winning funnels. So you can build amazing funnels that really work in no time, man. That's what you're gonna get in wolfoffunnels.com. And I have a little opt-in after that, but you need to click a button and read a long sales letter. So just if you like it, you can opt in. And that's pretty much it, man.
so read the sales letter, guys. Click the button, read the sales letter, sign up for the email list because this dude's dropping shit in his email list like crazy. He's on Twitter, Wolf of Funnels, just how it sounds with some F's and some S's there, and Wolf of Funnels. So follow this man, learn from him, absorb all you can from him, and watch what he's doing because that amount of focus, man, and what you're doing with funnels in this era and the way that you're thinking about them, man. It's like you're bringing a unique angle on it, man. It's to some extent it's a unique angle, and I think that's what we all need to strive for. You know what I mean? If we're building businesses, we're building agencies. It's so easy for these things to become commoditized. Like how many funnel builders are there out there, right? There's so many, but very few actually have their own point of view, their own, like interpretation of the psychology of the thing, their own frameworks.
Yeah.
This is how you differentiate yourself in a market. This is how you charge the prices that you actually deserve. This is how you build a business, right? You actually corner a market.
Thank you, brother. Really
All
appreciate it.
right, Diego, man, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, man. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor, man.
All right. I really hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Always Building. If you want to learn more about Always Building, our community, our membership group, and exclusive webinars and trainings and discounts on software and all kinds of fun stuff, get help along the journey so you're not all alone in this whole thing. Go ahead and check out alwaysbuilding.io. That's alwaysbuilding.io. And again, thank you so much. Best of luck on your journey, and you just let me know. You can reach out to me on Twitter or via email, alex@alwaysbuilding.io, or at always_building on Twitter. Okay, thanks again. Have a great one.